Today's story is both shocking and complex, taking not just a year but nearly a decade to find any justice. It is about a 21-year-old nun whose brutal murder in 1992 was finally solved after 28 years, in December 2020. This is the story of Sister Abhaya. This story begins in the quiet town of Kottayam, Kerala, in 1992. Like many other Christian areas in Kerala, Kottayam was a peaceful place with churches and convents scattered throughout. These places of worship played an important role in the lives of the people living there. One of the well-known convents in the area was the St. Pius Thicker Convent, which had a hostel where many young women came to study and stay, including several nuns. Among them was 21-year-old Sister Abhaya, a dedicated young woman who had come to the convent to serve God and help others. Sister Abhaya was studying at a pre-degree college and, like any student, had exams approaching. Determined to do well, she decided to wake up early one morning to study. She set her alarm, went to bed, and woke up around 4 a.m. After greeting a few of her friends in the convent, she sat down to begin her studies. At some point, she felt the need to take a short break. She left her books and went to the kitchen, possibly to drink some water or splash her face with cold water to stay awake. The next morning, when the other nuns woke up, they noticed something unusual. Sister Abhaya was missing. This was strange. When they went to the kitchen, they found a water bottle with its cap open, water spilled on the floor, and one of Sister Abhaya's slippers lying there. But where was Sister Abhaya? No one knew. The search became more urgent, and soon they found her other slipper near the convent's well. One of the nuns approached the well and looked inside. To her horror, she saw Sister Abhaya's lifeless body. The fire department arrived, the police were called, and eventually her body was pulled from the well. The nuns and hostel residents were in complete shock. Just the night before, they had shared dinner with her, laughed, made plans for the future, and even been annoyed by her early morning alarm. Now their friend was being carried out, lifeless, from the well. The local police officer, V.V. Augustin, arrived as part of the usual process. After the body was recovered, he wrote a report, called a photographer to take pictures of the scene and the body, and then sent the body for an autopsy. During the autopsy, doctors noticed cuts and bruises, found a head injury, and listed the cause of death as drowning. Despite the head injury, the cause of death was still marked as suicide, with the possibility of murder left open. At that time, many people found this explanation hard to believe. Why would Sister Abhaya set an alarm just to take her own life? The fridge door was left open, the bottle's cap was off, water was spilled, and her slipper was left on the floor. Everything seemed rushed. The story did not make sense. Many believed that this was not a suicide, but a murder. They also felt that someone was trying to cover up the truth, especially since the incident took place inside a convent. Sister Abhaya's death in a convent, where hundreds of girls came to study, learn about religion, and live, was highly unusual. The suspected cover-up deeply unsettled the community. An activist named Jomon Puthanpurakal formed a committee to seek justice. On April 16th, the case was handed over to the crime branch. After months of investigation, the crime branch released its report. The case was removed from the hands of the local police and given to the crime branch, which spent months investigating. In the end, they concluded that Sister Abhaya's death was a suicide. By then, Sister Abhaya had already been buried, and her clothes had been destroyed, leaving very little medical evidence. However, the case had become a major topic of discussion in Kerala. The media was filled with stories, and people across the state speculated about what had really happened. Many nuns were unhappy with how the investigation was proceeding. There was pressure from the media, from activists, and even from society itself. Naturally, the case was passed to a higher authority. The Central Bureau of Investigation, CBI, took over and a fresh investigation began. The CBI started with a new approach, looking for fresh clues and re-examining old witnesses. Everything seemed to be moving smoothly, but then something very strange and shocking happened. A CBI officer, Varghese P. Thomas, held a press conference in 1994 and revealed something surprising. He had been under pressure to declare the case a suicide. Because of this, he chose to resign from his job almost 9 years before his official retirement. You can imagine the chaos that followed. The case became a major news story, once again following the statement, leaving people bewildered as to why it was becoming so convoluted. Where was the pressure coming from? Why was this case so difficult to solve? The Central Bureau of Investigation, CBI team, continued their probe for a significant amount of time, despite the lack of substantial medical evidence. Later, they conducted several dummy tests to reconstruct the crime scene. They crafted a doll matching Sister Abhaya's size and weight and threw it into the well in various ways, carefully observing where the doll sustained injuries. These findings were then compared to the injuries found on Sister Abhaya. However, even after these experiments, no definitive answers emerged. By 1996, 3 years into the investigation, the CBI submitted a report stating, "We believe this should be treated as a murder case. We tried everything possible to determine who might be responsible for this tragic event, but despite our efforts, we could not obtain any solid results." 4 years after the incident, despite the involvement of the local police, the crime branch, and the CBI, the truth about what really happened to Sister Abhaya remained elusive. The initial report was rejected, and a new CBI team was assigned. This team conducted another round of investigations, and by 1999, they reached the conclusion that Sister Abhaya's death appeared to be a murder. The primary basis for this conclusion was the medical findings. This time, not just one doctor, but a panel of 3 doctors examined the body, uncovering several injuries that had been overlooked in the first post-mortem report. These crucial details had been omitted from the earlier examination. Revisiting the events of the incident, many nuns at the convent had observed more injuries on Sister Abhaya's body. Vivi Augustine, the officer initially involved in the case, had even called a photographer to the scene. The photographer meticulously examined Sister Abhaya's body and captured images showing additional injury marks that had not been documented in the earlier report or the post-mortem findings. When her body was retrieved from the well, several nuns present at the scene had also noticed these injuries, which had not been included in the original report. After 7 years of investigation, it became evident that Sister Abhaya had not taken her own life. It was a murder. But the critical question remained: who was responsible? The answer that emerged was even more shocking. The CBI admitted, "We know it is a murder, but we still do not know who the killer is." Once again, the court refused to accept this report, and another investigative team was formed. In 2005, a new round of investigations commenced, yet again concluding that the killers could not be identified. The court, unsatisfied with this finding, rejected the report once more. By this time, the activists who were part of the action committee were growing increasingly frustrated. Numerous discussions and conspiracy theories began circulating. Some media reports suggested that the first investigation had been mishandled. They alleged that Sister Abhaya had been buried too quickly, her clothes had been destroyed, and even her personal diary had been burned. The incomplete post-mortem and missing evidence led many to suspect that powerful forces were attempting to cover up the case. Various theories gained traction across Kerala. People questioned how such a chaotic investigation could be allowed to persist. Why had critical evidence disappeared? Then, in 2007, a shocking revelation came to light. By this point, the case had been under investigation for 15 years. Many witnesses had either passed away or altered their testimonies, while several suspects had been questioned without yielding any concrete proof. Then, unexpectedly, a witness stepped forward with a crucial piece of information that changed the course of the case. Surprisingly, this key witness was an ordinary thief from 1992. an unknown criminal who had committed minor thefts around that time. Could his testimony be trusted? Against all odds, not only was his statement taken seriously, but it also altered the entire trajectory of the investigation. The man, known as Aduka Raju, admitted that in 1992 he had engaged in theft to survive. He would steal from various places, sell the stolen goods, and use the money to support himself and his family. On March 27, 1992, Aduka Raju had set out to St. Pius VI's convent with the intent to steal. His plan was to climb onto the convent's roof and steal copper rods and wires used for lightning protection, which he could later sell. He arrived under the cover of darkness to execute his theft. However, what he witnessed that night was so disturbing that it remained etched in his memory for years. Raju noticed someone sneaking onto the convent premises. The presence of this person seemed unusual. As he watched, he saw a priest, Father Thomas Couture, moving stealthily in the dark. This raised an unsettling question. What was a priest doing at a girls' convent at such a late hour? Raju further claimed that he also saw another individual, Father Jose Puthrakayil, along with a nun, Sister Sefi. The revelations that followed would send chills down the spine of everyone involved in the case. That night, when he witnessed the strange incident, he felt helpless. How could he speak up when he was there to commit a crime? The next day, he read about Sister Abhaya and then saw the police's comments about her case. That is when he began to feel that something was truly wrong. He had gone to steal, and if he told anyone about that night, he would have to admit to his own crime. Adhikar Raju did something surprising. He went to the police and told them what he saw that night. Imagine what happened next. When they heard his story, the police listened to his account and then arrested him, accusing him of the murder. They created a simple theory. Adhikar Raju entered the convent that night to steal. While he was stealing, he ran into a nun. When she screamed, he panicked, killed her, and tossed her body into the well before escaping. Adhikar Raju was held for 58 days, during which he reportedly faced different kinds of torture. He said he was pressured to take the blame for the murder. He claimed he was offered bribes, money, a job, help for his children's schooling, and even a house if he confessed to the crime. His scrap dealer Shamir was also said to have been tortured and pushed to blame Raju for everything. However, both Adhikar Raju and Shamir refused to back down. When Raju would not give in to the lure of money, they threatened him with several false charges. But what made him stand firm against this corrupt system? It was his honesty. Later, throughout this dirty game, Adhikar Raju was the one who stood strong in his truth. The same petty thief from before was now someone whom even the court admired. From this point, the case took a new turn. The Central Bureau of Investigation now had two main suspects, Father Thomas Couture and Father Jose Puthrakayil. In fact, a neighbor who lived near the convent claimed he had seen Father Thomas Couture's scooter parked there on the night of March 26th. This neighbor went to a nearby shop for tea, and when he returned around midnight, he noticed the scooter outside the convent. At the time, he did not think much of it. However, later he changed his story, saying, "I said that under pressure." He was one of many witnesses who turned against the case. But hold on. When Adhikar Raju told the police about this, they already knew there were some suspects. Why did they not investigate this further? Why did they not look into Raju's account even a little bit? Or was someone telling them to set up Raju? Raju was being offered money. Who had enough money to back that? And the biggest question was, if Raju was telling the truth, what was Father Couture doing at the convent that night? A rumor started to spread that Father Couture had told a friend he and Sister Sefi from the convent were like a married couple. Even before this, many people had raised similar claims. Some of the nuns in the convent discussed it among themselves, and others outside shared their thoughts too. Finally, in 2008, based on Raju's statement, The Central Bureau of Investigation named Father Thomas Couture, Sister Sefi, and Father Jose Puthrakajil as the main suspects in this murder case. After this, the defense lawyer for the accused tried to undermine witness Raju by painting him as a professional criminal in court. The lawyer brought up about 10 criminal cases against Raju, most of which had him as the accused. Raju did not deny his criminal past, which turned the lawyer's argument against him. Even though he admitted to his previous crimes, Raju stood firm in his testimony, determined to seek justice for Sister Abhaya's murder. Because of his statement, Father Thomas Couture, Sister Sefi, and Father Jose Puthrakajil were all sent to Bengaluru for narco tests. The doctor in charge of the tests was named Malini. The results of the tests were recorded on 3 compact discs, which were then sent to the Kerala Judiciary Court and the Kerala High Court. However, it was later found that the discs containing the narco test results had been tampered with. Dr. Malini was called to explain this issue, but she had been suspended some time earlier, leaving the narco test reports incomplete. Everyone present during the narco tests was questioned. However, everyone claimed that no one had tampered with the discs. To find out the truth, the narco test discs were sent to the Central for Development of Imaging Technology. The agency analyzed the digital evidence and discovered that the first compact disc belonged to Father Thomas Couture. It contained a full recording of 32 minutes and 50 seconds that had been edited more than 30 times. The compact disc of Father Jose Puthrakajil's test was 40 minutes and 55 seconds long and had been edited 19 times. The last compact disc was for Sister Sefi's narco test, which recorded 18 minutes and 42 seconds and had been edited 23 times. After the tampering incident, the Kerala High Court ordered the Central Bureau of Investigation to present the original discs related to the narco tests in court within 10 days. But just a few days later, the original recordings of the narco tests for Father Thomas Couture, Sister Sefi, and Father Jose Puthrakajil disappeared. The original narco test recordings were unexpectedly aired on a local television station in Kerala. The identity of the person responsible for this broadcast and how it happened remains unknown. However, the content of these recordings revealed the horrifying details of how Father Thomas Couture and Father Jose committed the murder. According to the narco test recordings, on the morning of March 27, 1992, Sister Abhaya woke up at 4 a.m. It was a warm night, and she left her hostel room to go to the refrigerator to get some water. While drinking, she suddenly heard unusual noises coming from the kitchen. Curious and concerned, Sister Abhaya went to check, only to discover Father Thomas Couture, Father Jose, and Sister Sefi in a compromising situation. In that moment, before she could react or escape, they launched a deadly attack on her. Sister Sefi grabbed an axe from the kitchen and struck her on the head. The post-mortem report later confirmed that Sister Abhaya had suffered head injuries consistent with such an attack. After incapacitating her, they dragged her to the well and threw her in, hoping to conceal their crime. Following the airing of the narco test recordings, the Central Bureau of Investigation, CBI, intensified its questioning of all 3 suspects. However, in 2009, all 3 were granted bail. A shocking development that led to Father Jose being cleared of any wrongdoing in the case. Between 2009 and 2019, numerous court hearings took place. Finally, in 2020, the Kerala High Court sentenced Father Thomas Couture and Sister Sefi to life in prison, basing its decision on the narco test results and the testimony of Raju, the thief. Additionally, both were fined 5 lakh rupees as part of their punishment. Thus, after 28 years, one of India's longest-running murder mysteries was finally solved, thanks in part to the unexpected testimony of a thief. What are your thoughts on this case? Please share your opinions in the comments, and do not forget to subscribe. Thank you.